Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today. As we come to our word from the word. And today that word is wise. Wise. Now, we've talked about wisdom a couple times on here, but especially as you read through in Paul's letters, you'll see, especially here in Corinthians, in First Corinthians, rather, he keeps talking about this foolishness and wisdom and kind of how they're related. Now, part of the argument that he was trying to make was that the people kept saying, hey, I was baptized by Paul, or he led me to the Lord. I'm under Apollos. Others are saying, well, hey, I'm tied right back to Christ, and then some with Peter, and I mean, so it's all back and forth, and it's like Paul is trying to make the argument. He says, look, it doesn't matter, right? Apollos planted the seed, or he said, he planted the seed, Apollos watered, but God gives the increase. So he says, God is the one to be glorified through all of this. So when we're talking about having wisdom, and the reason he's having to talk about this, he even begins this chapter, 1 Corinthians 3, as we're looking at today, saying, look, I gave you some milk. I would like to move on to the meat, but man, if you would get past the milk first, right? You got to get the basics. And so in a nice way, being honest, he was being very nice and I guess easing them into it. He says, "Look, if you would have gotten that, then you would be fools, so that you could become wise. Instead, you're trying to be wise on your own, and you're looking foolish." Is essentially what he's saying. So that same thing happens when we look at worldly wisdom and what the world has to offer, and that's where their mindset was, right? That who they belong to, which person led them to salvation, which, it kind of be like, oh, well, hey, I was saved in a Billy Graham crusade, or hey, I was in such and such church. It was such and such preacher. It was such and such. And we tie our faith to them more so than to Christ. That's the worldview way of looking at it. Now, having said all that, let's look at the end of chapter 3 in 1 Corinthians, starting in verse 18. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you seems to be wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. Therefore, let no one boast in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all are yours, and you are Christ, and Christ is God's. He says, if you really want to be wise, then you need to understand you don't belong to these people, right? Like what Paul is saying is that you don't belong to me. He says, I belong to you. He says it's my goal to serve you as I serve Christ, right? That's that renewing of the mind. That's that culture shock that says, no, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. So many times in our Christian minds that's still tainted by the world, we start thinking like the world, thinking that we have to achieve it all on our own. And when we think we need wisdom, we go looking. How many times do we go looking for books and looking for messages or YouTube videos, even though that's what you're watching now? We look for sources of wisdom in all different kinds of places, when ultimately wisdom belongs to God. Well, the good thing is that we belong to Christ. Christ belongs to God. So as long as we're seeking after Him, we will have godly wisdom. But when we're looking for godly wisdom in the world, we're not going to find it. Just the same as if you came to God looking for worldly wisdom, the wisdom like the world has, you're not going to find it, because God is all knowing. He is all powerful. His wisdom is perfect. He does show us how to navigate this world. He gives us His Holy Spirit as indwelling us as believers to lead, guide, and direct us in the things that we would do in this world. But we're to be in the world and not of the world. So why do we think that the wisdom of the world would be able to guide us or direct us or lead us? Yet we follow it just the same. How many times do we look at the latest social media trend or the latest thing on the news or the latest conspiracy theory? And we start following along with those things because, well, hey, this is what such and such said. Or as the whole thing, this is what they said. Well, who is they? Right? Who in the world is the one that's teaching all these things? Yet we'll believe the way of the world first. The Corinthian church had to work on that. They needed to understand that everything was within their grasp and that everything would be given to them. And what he means by that is that the same for us as believers, that, hey, we're joint heirs with Christ. He is going to be rule. We're going to come back and rule and reign with him in the millennial reign. And you think about that as we come back to rule with him. The only reason we get all that, because we're joint heirs with Christ, is because of Christ. It has nothing to do with us. It's not because we deserve it. It's not because we earned it. It's because he graciously bestowed upon us the same things that he would give Christ. So with that, the wisdom that we have and the things of the world that would be given to us, they don't belong to us on our own. They belong to Christ. They belong to God, who gives them to Christ, who gives them to us. Now, why would you look for wisdom anywhere else except for the one who has already promised to give you all things in due time? Today, let's seek to be wise the God way. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.